I just as way of introduction, I met Billie Jo through these discussions. So there was this crazy person in Canada who, in our discussions, was just sort of I could consistently see that this is somebody who's really cut their teeth and spent their time in the field working in education and was and had really creative, useful, engaging ideas to kind of help us all think about what are we doing and how do we move that along. Billie Jo then became the um, our co-host here on the show, and the and also a co-leader of expeditions around the globe. So Billie Jo and I have spent time nature journaling with groups in Tanzania, and pretty soon we're going to be heading off to the Galapagos. Um, so this is somebody who here in this forum has always got your back and that's just the sort of person that you want with you when you are in a remote location doing programming. So Billie Jo, thank you so much for also I should say that the way that you have stepped up in the Wild Wonder community, helping with moderating things and helping uh, curate the community is really wonderful. So thank you so much for your work with that as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm excited about everything that's happening, and I'm excited to share my journey a little bit and sort of where I am. But the caveat is I wouldn't be here without incredible support from the nature journaling community and friends and family and just folks offering me some really incredible opportunities. So I hope to sort of share that today. I'm going to start from the beginning and sort of give you a little taste of my sort of background and kind of where I came from and sort of bring you up to today. I'm going to try really hard for it not to be too long. But I've got some pictures of me wee and
Oh,
young and then sort of moving up. So I'm going to just jump in and get started. Um,
excellent. I'm going to reduce my screen so you can be big on the full screen here. Thanks so much for doing this with us today.
Thanks so much for having me and for asking me to do this. So I'm a little bit nervous, but here we go.
Excellent.
All right. This is sort of my outdoor education journey. And so for me, it started pretty young. So this little picture here is a wee little Billie Jo. I'm about 9 months old in this picture. And then this is me sort of in my mid 20s when I was doing a lot of canoe tripping. And then this is me a couple of years ago with Jack in Tanzania. So we're going to sort of jump right in and give you guys kind of a scoop of my life. So uh, I know many of you know that I'm from Canada, but I was born in Ottawa, Ontario, which is sort of here on the map, which as a little extra fun bit is actually the national capital of Canada. So I was born in Ottawa. And my dad was in the military, so I lived there for until I was about 5. And then we moved to Manitoba, and I lived in a small town called Beauséjour, which is a French name, just outside of Winnipeg, and we lived there for about 2 years. And then we moved all the way over to Comox, Vancouver Island, where I lived for
I
5 years.
don't think we're seeing your cursor, but
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know why it's not popping up. I'm on top of the thing. But anyway, so if you can see on the map, British Columbia, there's the big island. And so then I lived on Comox, Vancouver Island for 5 years. And so, as most kids in the 80s growing up, I spent a lot of time outside on my bike and out until the wee hours of the night. I distinctly remember catching frogs and all that kind of stuff in a pond. I have a distinct remember memory of doing it alone, and so I'm thinking that's crazy. Like I would never let my kids do that now, but I was off on my own, right up to my chest in pond water. And searching around. So that was kind of my life growing up. We did some camping and all that kind of good stuff. My dad took an early retirement from the military, and we moved back to Ontario. And I've spent much of the rest of my life from grade 7 until now in different parts of Southern Ontario. And so I'm currently living in Orangeville, Ontario, which is just north of Toronto. And it is on the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Credit. And it is Treaty 19. And there's many Indigenous folks that still live here. So a little nod to that as well. I have one brother who is currently living with his family in Red Deer, Alberta. So we're kind of spread all over the place. And then this is my fam jam. So my husband Dave and I actually met in college, and we were good friends. We shared the same group of friends and things like that. And it wasn't until 4 years after college that a roommate sort of reunited us. And this year, on October 2nd, we will be celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary and 19 years together. Dave is also in the outdoor world. He works for Credit Valley Conservation Authority, which manages and looks after parks and uh, um, parkland and all that kind of good stuff. And we have two amazing kiddos. So Rain, who is the one in the oops, disease, who is in the green dress. This is actually her grade 8 graduation last year. She's 14. And then Aspen is our youngest, and she's 11 in grade 6. So the four of us spend quite a bit of time outside camping, and we do some hiking and things like that. And we are going on a very big trip this year. So we are actually heading to Thailand in March for 3 weeks. So this will be the girls' really, really big trip. And we're very excited. We feel extremely fortunate that these two are our children, and we get to hang out with them all the time. They're pretty awesome. I know I'm biased, but they're pretty awesome. So I love them lots. Um, Okay, so when I was in high school, I was really fortunate to go to a really tiny high school. Funny enough, it was the same high school that my parents went to, and that was in Madoc, Ontario. And they just had some really amazing teachers there, and there was incredible international opportunities. And so when I was in grade 8 and sort of being introduced to grade 9, they said there is this trip, and it's called Bike Hike, and you get to sign up, and then you get to fly to the UK area, and you cycle on your bike for 1 month, living in youth hostels. And I was like, I need to be on that trip. And so in 95, I went. I was 15, and there was about 20 or so of us and three teachers, and off we went. And so we landed in Manchester, England, where we had to put together our bikes, and then we literally rode our bikes out of the airport and on our way. And so that trip, we traveled through Wales, through Southern Ireland, back through Central Wales, and then back to Manchester. And this is the first time I was given a journal. And so I was given that journal at the beginning of the trip, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? I wasn't much of a writer. I didn't do anything like that. I took a lot of art classes through high school, which I really enjoyed, but never journaled. And my teacher was like, you gotta use it to document everything that you're doing every day and, all this kind of stuff. And I thought, oh, I'm probably never going to use this, but I'll bring it anyways. And I did use it, and I used it every single day. And I still have that journal. And this was sort of my first introductory into that. And so some of the fun things were is that they ran the trip every other year. And so I was able to rejoin it and do the trip again in 97. And I went with my brother was actually on that trip, and we landed in Gatwick, and we cycled all of southern England down through the moors and stuff. And so we were able to see Stonehenge when it was actually you were able to get much closer than you are, and I think now, which was a really awesome opportunity. This was also pre-GPS. So this book, this orange book that you see was our written directions on how to get from place to place. And yeah, we got lost like a lot because nothing really made sense. This is a brand new country for us. And on our very first day in 95, making our way from Manchester to Chester, we started just following the signs to Chester and ended up on an M4 highway. So those from the UK know that that is a major, major highway. And then you have all these high school students from Canada on our bicycles. And needless to say, the cops showed up pretty quickly. And then we had a full police escort down the highway to get us off the main highway and back onto one one of the main roads, where we had, one of the most amazing trips, very life-changing. And so again, first introductory into my journaling world. So then, in between those two trips, I was lucky enough again to have a really awesome high school. And I was part of the environmental leadership program. And so the environmental leadership program was a 4 semester or 1 semester 4 credit program. So you received a co-op credit, grade 12 phys ed, grade 12 environmental science, and grade 12 geography. But at the time, I was only in grade 11, and usually only grade 12 and 13. We had grade 13 at one point. Grade 13s were accepted into the program, and so I wasn't planning on applying until grade 12, and then it was exams. And I was in grade 11 and I was off on exams. And the teacher of the program contacted me and he said, somebody dropped out and I want you in the class. And I was like, but I'm only in grade 11. And he was like, I don't care. Come and join the class. And so I said, okay, well, I have to call the guidance and see if they can switch around my classes. And at the time, my guidance counselor was Mr. Allen. And he was like, Billie Jo, I don't think this is a good idea. You're going to have to take grade 11 classes in grade 12. And he was going on and telling me all the reasons why I shouldn't take the class. And I kindly interrupted him and said, Mr. Allen, I'm not sure you quite understand the conversation. I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you that I'm taking ELP and you need to change my schedule. And needless to say, I was in ELP in grade 11. So that was pretty awesome. That class included a 13-day canoe trip. Which was my very first canoe trip that I ever did. This is, I took this picture of the moose. We came around a corner and it was like right there. And this is my first moose. We saw some amazing um, sunsets, and we worked with the Ministry of Natural Resources, and we tagged rainbow trout, and we released Atlantic salmon, and we planted trees, and we worked with a whole bunch of different things. And this was sort of my first introductory into sort of what does that world look like in terms of environmental education. We also competed in the Envirothon, which was a high school competition in sort of all things environmental science. The team I was on won first. We went on to regionals where we placed fifth in regionals. Again, I was given a journal. This time, a Mighty Morphin's Power Ranger notebook was the journal that we received to document our 13-day canoe trip, which, by the way, was in June, and we slept under a tarp, so no tent. And so, needless to say, there was some definite mosquito nights that were pretty intense. But again, it was a trip that I will never forget. In this journal, this is where I start to see myself started adding slight pictures into it. And so for the most part, I would say these first couple of journals were very much like diary entries, but I did start to notice in this one, once looking back, that I did start to add small little pictures um, to my journal page. And so there was also a really funny spot where I'm trying to figure out a bird that makes a chickadee sound. And that's really funny to me that at 16-year-old me didn't know what a chickadee was. And now that's a sound that is quite familiar and comforting to me. So I was trying to document and being like, this is what it sounds like. This is what it sounds like, trying to figure out this bird. And so again, this is where that sort of carried forward a little bit with my journals. So then moving on the next year, so I was in grade 12 and I skipped a day of school. And so in between those, the end of that trip, so that summer, I had become an instructor. So the gentleman who did all of our instructing invited some of us to take our ORCA, which is the Ontario Recreational Canoeing and Kayaking Association, basic instructor course. So you could take it once you were 16. And so I had this instructor course, but I was like, I don't know what to do with it. And so we got wind that him and some friends of his were gonna go moving water paddling for the day. And he said, you should come. And we were like, oh, we have school. And he was like, skip. And we were like, okay. And so funny enough, we asked the teacher from from our environmental leadership class if we could borrow a boat, and he 100% let us borrow the boat, knowing that we were skipping the day to go moving water paddling. But in that, this one day was very life changing in that I met Bruce Hawkins, and later I met his wife Pat, and these two have become major mentors for me and my family, and they're actually the folks that we're spending some time with in Thailand. So still very close to them now. But Bruce was the first person to give me a job as a canoe instructor and guide. And so the next summer he was instructing Irish cadets. Bruce has a military background, and he was hosting cadets from Ireland in the US, and asked my friend and I if we would come down to the US with him and teach canoeing for 10 days with everybody. And we said yes. And that's sort of the end of the story. And so then I started to become a guide and working more with that. Once I started doing that, I got some more of my higher up canoe tripping levels and lake water and things like that. And so I became more and more of a higher level canoeing instructor and guide. During that time as well, I went on to post-secondary education where I studied at Sir Stamford Fleming College. I took Parks and Forest Recreation, and then I did a postgraduate diploma in adventure tourism management. During this time, in my brain, I was going to open my own canoeing business and I was going to run guided trips throughout Ontario. And so that was my focus. Things have slightly shifted, but I'm still in the same realms, which is really interesting to think. That was, 25 or so years ago. During that time, because I had already had my instructor levels, I was actually hired by the college to instruct and certify some of my peers, and went on some canoe trips. And I was actually one of the lab techs for our forestry course as well. So I had a lot of fun and learned a lot during that time. And so then canoe tripping really sort of kicked off. I worked for many companies and I would work straight through contract to contract from September to May. Um, and so my journals in this respect turned into more documentation. So a lot of metadata in here in terms of being a guide and having done all the information in case something went awry on the trip. And so there were times also that I was a solo guide, so it was somewhat of a diary companion as well when I was dealing with troublesome clients, things like that. I don't know where all of my journals have went. These are the ones that I could find, but I probably had at one point several dozen. Where they all are now in all my moves, I have no idea, but these are the ones that they still have left. But I was very fortunate to be able to do lots of paddling in Algonquin Park, which is one of it is our biggest provincial park here in Ontario. Killarney, I've done the Spanish River, Petawawa River, Collonges in Quebec, a few fly-in trips into the Des Moines. I also did a lot of photography. I still really like photography, so I would sort of document things that I found interesting and then pieces of nature with photography. And then I would back up my stories and things like that in my journals, which was kind of interesting. So a little bit of a different focus on my journals, but still journaling the whole time. One trip, oh yeah, so this some of the my trips is on Des Moines River. So we woke up and it was just this incredibly foggy morning. And here's a trip of, or a picture of us flying into the Des Moines River, which is a spectacular space here in Ontario and into Quebec. One of the coolest trips that I got to do was I went to the Yukon Northwest Territories and I did a 17-day canoe trip on the Snake River. And so I drove across Canada with all the gear and Bruce. Right up the Alaskan Highway into Whitehorse. We stayed for a few days. I got to sort of travel around there, and then we flew in and we dropped into Dow's Lake. So just in behind the picture where I'm standing in front of the mountain, there's two little puddles. Those are Dow's Lake. And they kind of dropped us there, and we spent 17 days on this river, which was amazing. And we took out north of the Arctic Circle, was able to drive down the Dempster Highway, spend some time in Fort McPherson, spend some time in Dawson City. Yes, I shot the toe for anybody who knows what that is. And if you don't, check it out because it's super fun. And I still have the journal from this trip, which is really awesome. So my canoe tripping years were pretty amazing. And then I decided that maybe I wanted to have children, and canoe tripping maybe wasn't the most conducive lifestyle to have children. And so when Dave and I got together, I decided to move here to Orangeville, and I started to look for alternative education that I could get myself into. And this is when I got into outdoor centers. So I worked at the YMCA and I worked for the Peel District School Board for 12 years. These were curriculum-based programming. In the beginning, I just was trying to get my head around sort of what that looked like, and what how to tie things into the curriculum. It was all very new to me. I became a facilitator for the Canadian Wildlife Federation for Project Wild and Below Zero, as well as a facilitator for Project Wet Canada as well. During that time, sort of in the later few years, maybe just before COVID, nature drilling sort of became this thing that people were kind of talking about, and I was like, this would be a really awesome way to get kids to connect with nature in like a different way, and not to be so focused on in terms of like a specific program, but let them sort of have some autonomy over what they were learning. But no matter what I tried and I could figure it out, giving a kid a piece of paper and a clipboard and telling them to sit in the forest and write down their thoughts and observations just doesn't really go well without some scaffolding. And so it was becoming tricky, but I kept going and I kept on trying to pursue. And then COVID hit. And so then this is where the world just kind of, collapsed. And all of a sudden we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. But in that time, I was introduced to Jack. And this was another one of those pivotal moments of life changing for me, in that he had released 3 videos on sort of what is nature journaling, how it sort of develops the brain, how you can kind of connect it to learning. And I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for, this sort of scaffolding. And I remember distinctly saying to a colleague of mine, I mean, it's awesome, but this guy lives in California. Like we in Canada, we are in winter. So like, what do we do in the winter, right? And someone said, you should email this guy. And I was like, no way. This guy's pretty famous. He's like an author. There's no way this guy's going to get back to me. And so I thought, well, what I had to lose, right? I didn't have anything to lose. So I emailed him. And funny enough, within 20 minutes of receiving that email, Jack got back to me and invited me to the Nature Journaling Educator Forum. And that became very, very important to me during COVID. I was introduced to an incredible community, introduced to all of you and Jack and Avea and all these really amazing people. And I just dove head in first into nature journaling. And I wanted to know everything I could about it and how I could integrate it more in with my students. And so moving into an online platform, I immediately started teaching nature journaling workshops and integrating it into every single thing that I could do. We were able to have the tech to take ourselves outside. And so I had to figure out, in the one picture here, this is the back of my cell phone with a hot pad on it, trying to keep it warm in minus 28 degrees while I was outside on my cell phone showing kids nature outside. This snail is actually a snippet from a video where I was down on my hands and knees with a macro camera showing this snail like munching away while the kids were nature journaling this. And so this became really awesome and super fun. And I was busy. I was doing up to 4 or 5 classes a day. And I just kind of dove in deep. And it was really amazing because I didn't have to okay anything with my boss. And I was able to make my own schedule. I was given a set of schools. I was able to book them as much as possible, and then just do what I wanted to do. And so, if anything, it was an introductory to what it would look like to have my own business. And I really thrived in this, and really created some really amazing connections with teachers and students. This year was also the year that Jack and the Wild Wonder Foundation had also released one of the first nature drilling educator workshops. And so I, of course, jumped onto that as well, and then started coming to Wild Wonder conferences online as well. And so just really tried to eat up as much information about nature drilling as I possibly could. Then we were back in the schools. And so I was like, well, I'm not letting it go. And so I did whatever I could. So no matter what program those teachers had signed up for, if I could integrate nature journaling into it, I did. And I sort of took liberties with that, and I integrated into everything, and it really had a positive effect, and kids really liked it, everywhere from grade kindergarten all the way up to grade 12. So anybody that I could get nature journaling, I was nature journaling with them at their school or when they came to us at the field centers. And I was one of, there was a few other colleagues, but I was the one who really dove headfirst and just really saw the benefits of all of this. During that time as well, I was incredibly fortunate to be asked by Beth Ann Burton to share my experience nature journaling on her podcast, which was a really fun experience. Anybody who's listened to her podcast, Beth Ann is an incredible woman to talk to, and she's so lovely. And I had an amazing time. And this was sort of a first time anyone had ever sort of said, like, what's your journey? How are you doing with this? And that was pretty cool. And then another friend asked me to be on her Eco Inquiry podcast as well, where I got to share even more what I was doing and how I was doing it during COVID times. So it was really exciting opportunities for me. And so then I got to meet some more nature journaling mentors. And so special thanks and appreciation go out to Jack and Roseanne and Nevaeh and Kate Rudder and everybody else in the amazing nature journaling community. I remember in 2022 finding out that Jack was going on this trip to Tanzania, and my friend and I were like, "Oh, do you think that we could make this work? And how do we do that? And could we afford to do it?" And then we were like, "Oh, I don't know if it's the right time for us," and et cetera, et cetera. And then I get this email from Jack saying, "Hey, can we meet to talk about the website? Because I'm going away to Africa this summer." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then as he's talking to me, he starts saying, like, do you get time off during the year? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not like a teacher. And he's like, okay, it's interesting. And then he's like, well, and he starts talking about wildebeest and how they're birthing like in February. And I'm thinking in my head, oh my gosh, he wants me to come on this trip, but I'm gonna have to disappoint him and tell him that there's no way that I could come. And then because I just thought he was asking me as like a participant, and then he said, I'd really like you to come with me as my co-lead. And I was like, what? And I remember just being so shocked. And I said to him, I have to get off the phone before I start crying. And I couldn't talk, and I was just freaking out. And I said, out of all the people in the world that Jack has access to and knows all these incredible people, the honor to be asked to join him on this trip and be his co-lead was one of the coolest experiences ever. And then to finally meet him live and in person in Tanzania was also really, really crazy. And so later that summer, I signed up for to be a part of the Sierra Nevadas trip in Sierra Nevadas as a participant, and that's when I got to meet like Roseanne and Avea and Kate Rudder live and in person as well, and just learn from them and just sort of soak in all of their awesomeness. So it was kind of a crazy time there. And then in that same time, we got back from Tanzania at the end of February, and in June, I was told I lost my job. And so after 12 years of being at the Peel District School Board, they said, sorry, funding cuts, three of you are gone. And that was really devastating because at the same time, my brother had been diagnosed with colon cancer as well. He's good now, but at the time, there was just sort of this crashing cascade of insanity in my life. And I was like, what am I going to do? This was sort of the job I thought I was going to finish off with and sort of retire with. And now all of a sudden, in my sort of mid 40s, I was trying to navigate what that looks like. And so I started to try and tell myself that it was a gift as opposed to something that was detrimental. And I tried to really look at it that this was a new opportunity for me and not something that was a negative. And so I do feel like that was really good mindset to be in when everything was sort of crashing down around me. My family went out to Alberta to visit my brother and to sort of see how he was. And while I was there, Roseanne Hansen called me when I was in Alberta and said, I heard you lost your job. I'm really sorry to hear that, but I'm looking for someone to help me with Wild Wonder stuff. Are you interested in this contract job? And I was like, yes. And so she brought me on to be a volunteer coordinator for the Wild Wonder Conference. And then that is progressed in that she then asked me to be one of the teachers uh, to design some of the workshops for the Wild Wonder Education Certificate Program. And so that was huge for her to do that, and I will be forever grateful that she thought of me and reached out during that time. That fall, a friend of mine who works at the Riverwood Conservancy saw me at a conference and was like, "You're amazing. I love you, and I need you to come work for me." And so I picked up some supply work there where I was able to continue to dip my toes into that. And they were really excited to have me nature journaling there. And so again, I brought my nature journaling to the Riverwood Conservancy, and any possible human that would let me integrate nature journaling into what I was doing, I did it. Um, and then in 2024, Maxine Koski reached out to me as a facilitator with Project Wet Canada, and they were looking for a new national coordinator. And so she invited me to become part of the team. And so I am currently still part of that team, and I work part-time hours, but I am the national coordinator for program and delivery, and I look after Ontario, the Maritime Atlantic provinces, and Nunavut. And so I work with Maxine and we facilitate programs, facilitate trainers, do a lot of work with cross-curricular activities, things like that. And so it's been really, really positive. Then this fall or this past winter, I got an email that I had received, I've been nominated and received the Wild Educator of the Year award with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. So I remember sitting at my computer and my husband was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I couldn't talk. And I said, "I think I won an award." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "I think I kind of won like a big award." And so I was pretty shocked, and this is a award that I never thought I would win. I know lots of people who have it, lots of very close friends of mine, and new people that I've met along the way, and but it was pretty awesome. So obviously, I accepted the award, and then the cherry on top of that was the award ceremony was in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, and so they flew me to Yellowknife, Northwest Territories in June to receive the award. And so I got to hang out there for 2.5 days. And so this one picture here is of me nature journaling along the edge of Great Slave Lake. And so this was one of my bucket list places to go. So it was pretty awesome. I got to meet some really amazing people. And again, so thank you to my nominator and to the Canadian Wildlife Federation for the honor, because this was pretty cool. And so that kind of brings me to Pine and Ponder Outdoors. So in April, I decided to go for it, and I've been talking about it for 2 years. And I said, okay, I said to my husband, all right, like I'm just gonna do it. And so I launched my business in April. And I created a business plan and a website, and I really wanted my focus to be on nature journaling. I didn't want to overcrowd my self with too many different workshops. So I created sort of an introductory to nature journaling, and then you can sort of have tailored curriculum based integration of nature journaling after that. And I also provide an 8-week course for any teachers who want to become more embedded over time in terms of nature journaling. And I just kind of put it out there and to see sort of like what's going to happen. And again, I've been incredibly fortunate. So I, oh my gosh. So, um, the Hill magazine here in town, wanted, they found out about me and wanted to do like sort of a little expose on me. And the library at the same time in town had asked me to be part of their Expert in the Library series. And so I did that, and the Hills magazine came to that, and they just released that article, which was amazing. But out of that, I ended up building really good relationship with the library. And I did 3 workshops over the summer with them as well. So that was amazing. Got to meet a lot of people within the community. I would bring them out to a small park in town, a nature journal. I did a teen one, a family one, and then one specifically for adults. Again, just creating really great connections within the community. My friends at Riverwood Conservancy emailed me up and they said, we're running some camps. We would love for you to come in and do some nature journaling workshops with our camps. So this summer I was able to run 4 of those. And so again, really based on like an introductory to nature journaling, getting the kids outside, getting them connected to nature. Those both went really well. The outdoor learning store asked me to be part of their creative series. So there was like, so a lot of this is sort of some freelance kind of things that I've been asked to do and then do. And so I did that in August. And then folks from Take Me Outside asked me to be a part of a wellness day for administrators with the Dufferin Peel Catholic Board. And so that also went really well. And I'm now a vendor, which basically means that I am an authorized person to run programming at the school. And that has went so well that I am booking into middle of November at this point in time for my business running nature journaling workshops in schools. And so far I have booked 5 schools and the entire school. So that could be anywhere from 8 to 16 classes where I'm going in and doing nature journaling workshops. I just booked a high school group from one here in town. And I've had a bunch of different folks sort of reaching out. I'm also doing some mentorship work with educators in a Quebec school as well. And so I'll be starting that next month where I work with them for the entire year. Another person I got in contact with through my work with Project Wet got me connected with a company called Connected North, and they work underneath an umbrella of called Taking It Global, and they work with 200 Northern and Indigenous schools in Canada, and I offer nature journaling programming for them, and so that has been really awesome. And so I do it virtually. But this year already, I have met 2 incredible classes from Whitehorse. I've got some kids from Nunavut coming up. And so it's been a really great experience so far. So my business, I would say, is going really well. My 11-year-old likes to say that it's booming. I like to put her in check and say, let's not get crazy. Things aren't booming, but they're going very well. And I really um, I do social media. I would say social media is one of the things that I do to sort of get my word out of what I'm doing. And also, I, over the years, have created a mailing list. And so I do email marketing through that as well. And so that has generated some popularity. I would say a lot of it is word of mouth, which has been sort of working for me really, really well. But those are sort of my main um, ideas of sort of getting the word out. In terms of how I'm structuring it, again, my classes run about an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how many classes there are for the day. If it's a whole school, I usually do 40 minutes with kindies because their attention span is about that, and about an hour for everybody else. The high school group, I'm with them for about 2.5 hours. At this point, my starting rate for classes is $250 per class Canadian. But if a school books multiples, so if they're booking their whole school, then I offer a discount. And so that discount can be anywhere be about $10 to $15 per student, which around here is pretty on par with what other folks are doing. And so I've tried really hard to create a program that is engaging, that allows students the opportunity to really dive deep into nature journaling, but giving them the scaffolding that helps them be successful in whatever shape that they see fit to do. I also prioritize the teacher in terms of if I can get the teacher on board, then, hopefully they'll rebook me for more specific stuff, but will they be able to start to integrate this into the classroom themselves? And so this is what I'd like to do more with teacher groups as well. And so trying to do that, but at the same time, making sure that my time is being uh, compensated because I do have a family. I still have two kids that are still need to go to university. And at the same time, making it affordable that it's a program that people want to have and they see the benefit out of it. So those are sort of like the caveats in terms of like sort of how I kind of think about all those things. It's sort of ever changing. With some spaces, I'm able to add in a journal for every kid as well, and things like that. And then I'm still doing some of my canoe stuff as well on the side. And so that's kind of my journey throughout our education, my journey with nature journaling specifically, and that kind of brings me up to, where I am today. So here's some pictures of some of the folks at my workshop this summer with the library and Riverwood. And then this is the summer creative workshop. And then this is the Hills magazine, my publication that came out as well. And so that's gotten some traction as well. And so that's sort of my journey and kind of where I am at this moment in time with my business. And so, yeah, that's it.
Oh, so thank you so much for kind of
You're welcome.
that framework. It is, when you see somebody who's kind of like, I'm in all these schools doing all these sort of teaching things, we tend to have this feeling like that. Like, well, like th this didn't happen from organic roots and one thing leading to another, and then there just happened to be that time that you met this person, and then there's this sort of serendipity and all these sorts of things. But it's really important to, I think, sort of see that programs like this are where they are because of building, and it still is a hustle, right?
It's a hustle. It's a hustle. Yes. There's not yeah, so I am currently, so most of the stuff I'm doing now goes underneath my business name, right? So this my work that I do with Project Wet still it goes underneath my business, but that is still a responsibility that I have to do, right? And so
Right.
then I have Connected North, that's also under my business. And then I have the stuff that I'm doing like in schools, and then I still have my Wild Wonder stuff, and then I still do emergency supply work at my kids' school because I also think that that's really important to help out there. I'm also on parent council with my children's school. I'm into my 11th year. I'm back to being co-chairs, so there's that. Both kids play soccer. My husband is the coach for my daughter, and he is a referee for hockey and also does a lot of volunteer work there. So there's a lot of extra stuff that we're doing on top of just trying to run a small business as well. So there's lots of moving parts in our house, but I do have to say that losing my job 2 years ago and having at the moment feeling uh that it was over and that I was going to have to just go and get a regular job and that I wasn't going to be able to continue my career in outdoor education, which I had thought this is not a career that just comes easily and you just get it. It's a hustle, it's a contract to contract. You are hustling your whole life to stay in this job. There's not many folks that I went to college with who are still in this industry.
Right.
Um, but to be able to look back on that and now say to myself, like I did it, and I've never been happier to be able
Mm,
to do that. And so to have to be my own person and to sort of be able to uh decide what it is I want to do and how I want to do it um is really amazing. And so right now things are really good. I hope they continue to be great and awesome, but I also am a realist in that there's going to be some hiccups that come along, and I just am going to have to deal with that as a role. But it feels really good to be able to be in this position that I probably never would have done had that not have happened. So I am a believer that things happen for a reason. So anyways.
uh-oh, because we could get into some trouble
I
on
know,
the whole.
I know. As soon as I said it, I was like, Jack's gonna go crazy, but
That's to go crazy. Okay, all right, I just have to take a few deep breaths. But the things happen for a reason. But I agree that things happen. So here's where we can find common ground on that.
yeah, for
So
sure.
things happen all the time,
Yes.
and that there are. serendipity happens,
Yes.
right? And that, you just happen to do this with this person then, and then that this person, like life really is kind of like a Dickens novel where
Hmm.
that character that you were introduced to, like all of a sudden shows up again, and
Yes.
that thread continues.
Yes.
Um, and you mentioned at the start that you sort of that there are all these sort of like people who helped you
Yeah. I
and
wouldn't be
things,
here without the people.
but the thing is, like, these people are not, um this isn't out of charity that somebody's saying like, would you
Yes.
lead the canoe trips with me,
Sure. Sure.
right?
Yes.
It's because you're showing up
Hmm.
with integrity,
Hmm.
and then being kind to everybody, and eventually through doing this, being around enough that you do build relationships and those
Hmm.
connections,
Hmm.
um because you really show up. And then that's how that kind of word of mouth things happen, like word of mouth things. I agree that like this sort of weird things, like this person talked to this person, and then would you believe it, this thing happened.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that you prime the pump for those things happening. Like very often, sometimes you'll do a great job and be really a kind, good person over here, and people say, "Well, thank you very much."
Yep.
And then sometimes there's this sort of strange feedback loop. And
Hmm.
there's no way to tell where that is. A good reason to be kind to everybody.
Yeah. And I always, it's so funny though, because even back in the day when I was canoe tripping, I have a unique name. There's probably most people in this space. I am the only Billie Joe that you know, most likely. And so I always thought at the end of the day, I needed to always represent myself really well. I needed to be really kind, and I needed to make sure that I did show up and that I did do a good job, because if anyone was going to remember a name, they were going to remember Billy Joe, and I
Right.
never wanted a negative connotation to follow that name. And so it's
Yeah.
funny enough that this name, it's a big name, and so it was the driving force for me to be like, when people think Billy Joe, I want them to think, oh yeah, she's great, or she does a good job, she's a good worker, right? She works really hard, and those are the kind of things that I wanted, and from a very young age, when I first got into this business, because I thought this community is very small, and
Yeah.
it's very very small, and it's big but small, and so I wanted, my name really mattered to me in terms of making sure that happened. Now, have I made people angry? Probably. Is there lots of people out there who don't like me? Sure, absolutely, right? But if I could always come at the end of the day, and them to be able to say, maybe she's too much, she's too loud, she's too opinionated, she's too this, those are the things that I go, yeah, I can deal with that, right? What I didn't want them to say is she's unkind, she's lazy, she doesn't work really hard, those kind of things, right? So you're always going to rub people the wrong way, but at the end of the day, if I can show up, and do a really good job and support the people that are
Mm-hmm.
in my life and who I'm working with and working for, then those are the things that make, that are really important to me, is to show up and to do a really good job. Yeah.
That's really wise. Um, yeah, 5 chapters later, there you are again. Okay. Um, let's. I've got a bunch of questions that I want to throw at
Yeah.
you on this, but I see that Clara also has one, so I'm going to bring you into the spotlight. Thank you so much for being with
Oh,
us.
Hi, how are you?
hey, Billy Joe.
How's it going?
Um, Good. Let's see, where do I start? I had a question. We're actually about the same age, and you have two kids about the same age. My
Mhm.
kids. My
We
husband's
need
actually
to
French
get all three
Canadian,
of
by
our
the way.
kids together at the same place because,
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess aren't they all the same age? 10
yeah.
and
Yes.
13.
Yes.
Um, well, anyway, so can you just speak about what it's like to be a mom to two kids and running a business?
That's a,
Because
yeah.
that's a hard one. Let me just say, summer, I was like, there's nothing I could do about summer. It's like, all right, throw that out the window. So,
Yeah. That's a really great question, and I would say it is something that I am consistently um struggling is not the right word. I'm consistently aware of. I'm going to say I'm
Hmm.
aware of. And so the one thing that I would say in the last 2 years that I've been able to do, it's going to be different moving forward now that the business has launched, but I've been able to really dictate my schedule. And so I've been able to show up for the games, the after
Yeah.
school games, for sports. I've been able to be the parent volunteer. I've been able to do all of those things and to show up. And the nice thing is that luckily my husband makes a good living and a good salary, which is fantastic. Can we live off of his salary? No, we cannot. So I have to contribute. I have to be a part of that. But I'm able to bend and shift it. So I might, summer is a crazy time. And so I might take parts of the day off and then do more in the evening or vice versa. Right. And so balancing that out. I've been really open with my girls and really talked about the struggles that it is to be a mom and to be a working mom. And so I remember the first time I went with Jack, Aspen was 10 at the time and really did not do well with the fact that I was leaving her for 10 days and I was going to be 8 hours ahead of her in terms of schedule and what that looked like. And was a lot of conversation. Now they're just like, oh, it's old hat. Oh, mom's leaving again. Oh, whatever. Right. And so now they have, are able to contact me and things like that. But the messages that I want to always convey to them is that just because you're a mom doesn't mean that you can't still have a career. And it doesn't mean that you have to stop doing the things that you love. And so I always said to them, it's really important to understand um, that you have to also put yourself in a position that um for yourself. I know that I don't want that to sound selfish, but you really can't
Mm-mm.
forget about yourself, right? Because you were a human before you were a mom, right? And so now you have to sort of balance those two things out together. And I always say to my girls, like, I hope one day when you become a mom, if you become a mom, is that you can find that balance as well. And I think I'm doing an okay job because Rain made me cry in her grade eight graduation. She had to write a letter to somebody, and she wrote a letter to me. And in that letter, she wrote that she was incredibly proud to have me as a mom, and that I was showing her how to run a business and how to travel the world to do the things that I love to do while still showing up. And so that I
Mhm.
became a blubbering pile of, tears at her grade eight graduation. But that really meant a lot to me in that I was like, okay, it's not always great. I don't always, sometimes I am short tempered because I have a million things going on. And I just have to be honest with them and say, give me a few minutes and then I can do this, or give me this and then I can do this. Or, yesterday I wasn't able to go to the soccer tournament because I had a meeting. So my incredible husband was like, let me look at my schedule. And then he took the day off and he went as the parent volunteer. And then the meeting got canceled and I was able to shuttle myself up to the soccer tournament to be able to do that. And so I think it's okay to say no, you're not going to make it sometimes. And you try your best to make it all the other times. And I would say so far in this very short window of time that I've had an official business is that I've still been able to make my family a priority. But it's hard. It's not easy. And there are days when I go to bed and I say to my husband, I think today was a bit of a mom fail, right? And I think we have to give ourselves some humility in
Mhm.
that and give ourselves a break that we are just human and we're trying to figure it out. And I do find that it's easier now that they're a little bit older and they also have some independence. I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing if they were littles. Like that would be a lot harder for me. But at almost 12 and 14, there's quite a bit of independence with them and more of an understanding of like what that looks like for me, right? And so it's just having really we are a house that is incredibly open in terms of conversation. Pretty much nothing is off the table at our house. And I think that's really important to have those conversations, especially I think with young girls. In my case, I have two of them, and I think it's really important to come at it from that perspective. So that's a really long-winded answer. I hope that sort of answers how I
Yeah, it
kind of
does.
approach it and deal with it. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
it's interesting to try to build like a values-based business. And then
mhm.
people say like, well, what's your goal? Well, my goal is not to make thousands of dollars. It's just I want to be with my family, partially. So that was a very
Yeah,
touching story. I started crying and tearing up when you
yeah.
were talking about that. So adorable.
Yeah, I think communication is a big one, and yeah, knowing your goals. Like my goal also is not to make $1 million like that. I'm not creating some kind of hedge fund. Like this isn't what I want to do. But I want my goal is to show my girls that you can make a career to the things that you love and you can do that.
Mhm.
My goal is to connect more people and students and teachers with the outdoors and how important that is. I'm a huge advocate for that. And my goal is to make a living that supports my family. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
millions of dollars. That means it's here to support my family. We are never going to be a rich family. We're probably never going to be a family who doesn't have to worry about bills, but I want to be able to have it where we can still have a savings and be able to trip and be able to do things that are really fun and create experiences. We've shifted the mindset a little bit in our house. Christmas used to be material things,
Mm.
and now my husband and I kind of have a conversation, and we had a conversation with the kids, and we said we would like to flip the script a little bit, and instead of sort of being really focused on material things, we'd like to spend time together. And so last year we did a trip. So we took the money that we would have normally spent on the stuff and we did a trip to Mexico. And that was the girls' first experience going sort of really internationally outside of the States. And that to them was really important. And so the Christmas became like, flip flops and like a beach bag and, the little things like that they would need. And they already know coming up for this Christmas, it's the things that you need that are going to get us ready for this really big trip that we're going on. And this trip also um, is being gifted by Bruce and Pat. They are gifting us most of this. This is not a trip that my husband and I just cash money have going. This was an incredible gesture for people who have been in my life since I was 17 years old. You know what I mean? So I look at these opportunities that folks have and are presenting with me, and I do everything I can to show up and to do the best I can and to grab a hold of any of those opportunities, because what an incredible gift that this couple is doing for my family, right? And so how do we shift that and we look at that and we give that a learning experience to my girls at the same time, right? So yeah, I yeah, that's probably all I got for that.
Clara, this is such an important question because
A
at the
really
end of
important
the day, we're
question.
human beings doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And what does that look like in a real human being timeline and space?
Hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
there's all sorts of sort of weird competing forces on us as human beings kind of doing this. One is that I could have done more, so I should have done more,
Every
and
day.
then kind of guilt around that. And then I could have done more in that and that and that and that. Um, and so, being a daddy, how am I um I have to keep reminding myself that my number one job is sort of being the best daddy that I can.
Mhm.
And then there's this whole kind of the hustle thing where we
Yeah.
have this, we're an entrepreneur and you're right, yeah, we're not trying to strike it rich here, but the
Hmm.
idea of sustainable plus, I think
Yeah.
is really, really important. So
Yeah.
this is the idea that you want to be able to make enough to be able to sustain yourself and your family,
Hmm.
plus a little bit more so that you can save or grow into the next version of it.
Yes.
And so that's not about being like,
Yeah. No.
miserly. It's not an Ebenezer Scrooge moment. It's it's that what you're doing is really good. And so having that be sustainable plus the world needs that.
Mhm.
And then it's also your daughter seeing that.
Yes.
And I'm looking at this, you're talking about kind of the arc of what you're doing, and you kind of ended up in this place where you have you said you're able to develop your own schedule. So you're able
Yes.
to look at like when the game is and gonna do these sorts of things. There is a writer named Daniel Pink who identified three things that um, you should sort of think about in terms of your career trajectory. And that sort
Mhm.
of at the start, you need sort of a basic amount of money to be able to kind of meet your needs.
Mhm.
That's sort of sustainable plus position. And then what happens is people get to that and then they start thinking to themselves, I got to get the next promotion and the next promotion and the next promotion. And you get more money, but you're not happier. But if you're looking at kind of what makes you happier, he identified these three things that really give people satisfaction. And I think I'm seeing those elements in this.
Mhm.
So the first is autonomy.
Mhm.
And so you're able to make your own schedule, right? You're able to say like I'm no we can't do it on that day because of the game.
Mhm.
And then you can kind of work around that. And so
Mhm.
the more that you are able to not be at somebody else's beck and call, that gives you also this sort of connection with it's so much easier than to kind of get this home life balance,
Mhm.
right? So the second was mastery, where you're doing things where you are developing skills that are important to you, and you sort of see yourself growing. So you're kind of getting this toolkit together as an educator, as a wilderness guide, as a nature journaling um, uh, instructor, or the skill sets you're developing with Project Wet. You're
Mhm.
developing yourself as this sort of ninja educator. And that's really fulfilling, which leads into the third one, which is purpose,
Mhm.
that you're doing something that is profoundly meaningful to you. And so what Daniel Pink suggests is sort of once you get sort of your to the basic level, as you kind of get this kind of capital from the world where you show up, you do, and you are being kind, you're being competent, you are being, you're bringing your best self forward. That then opens up opportunities,
Mhm.
and not always to be looking for the that I'm gonna I'm gonna capitalize on that capital
Mhm.
by getting a raise. But
Yeah.
how do you use that for more autonomy, mastery, and purpose?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that I find that framing is really useful, but it's neat to sort of see those threads through
Yeah,
your story.
and it's not always perfect, right? Like
Right.
there are some times where I do miss the game, right? The soccer game. And my kids know that they're like, "Oh, well that's okay, mom, because you made 95% of the other ones." So,
Yes.
it's okay. It's okay if you miss this one, right? And so um I think there's grace and I that happens on both parts of that party, the kiddos and the parents. I will say I have the most amazing husband. He is incredibly supportive. I couldn't be
Mhm.
luckier. When I was freaking out about opening the business and literally having a panic attack, he looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if I'm a total failure?" And he looked at me and he goes, "What have you invested in this?" He goes, "In terms of money." And I go, "Oh, well, not 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 really that much." And he goes, "Right." So he's like, "So if it fails, you miss out on a website?" And I was like, "Oh, well, fine. You being smart, I'll calm down." Right? And so it was somebody who just was able to be a step outside of that and be like, "Billy Joe, like, calm down. Like you didn't invest $1 million. You invested in yourself, right?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "You're awesome." So he's like, anything else, he's like, it's just gonna fall into place. And he's incredibly optimistic, which also sometimes drives me crazy, but he's incredibly optimistic and very supportive. And so when I have things that are going on weekends or things like that, he's like, "I got it." When I go to
Mm.
Tanzania with Jack or anything, he's like, "I got it." Right? He is a dad that I don't have to
Right.
prepare meals for. I don't have to do any of that stuff. He's gonna clean the house. He's gonna do the laundry. He's going to do all that. So I am
Right. Right.
incredibly lucky that I not only have a husband, but a partner. And I
Ah,
think that understanding that not everybody necessarily has that, and I do count myself incredibly fortunate to have a partner in
mm,
this situation. And it's a partner with bringing up my children, our children. It's not, mom isn't taking the only role. And I think that's really important. And I understand very clearly that that's not always the situation in a lot of spaces, and that the mom really is the person who is the main parent, the main sort of home keeper. And I get that that is going to be much harder. And so my situation is a little different, and I do have to give that caveat that I have an incredible
right.
support within my four walls that is very, very helpful. So, for all the single moms out there, all the kids, all the parents and moms who have more than two kids, like, my God,
Mm,
right? Like, you all deserve like awards upon awards upon awards to be able to do all the things that you do.
right.
And I'm always in awe of all those, and the single dads, right? Anybody who is in any of those situations, it's an unbelievable task to be a parent, and the guilt is real, right? And so it's a balance. It's really a balance to try and find how that works. For me, I do think communication is really important. And I think just being, I'm not only humble with my students about the things that I don't know, and when I mess up, I'm very humble with my kids. And I say, I don't know the answer to that. I messed up today. I'm sorry. And I think you just have to be really humble and show a vulnerability with them. And I think that that is, at the end of the day, I try to not just be a good mom, but a good role model. And so sometimes I fail at that. And so sometimes you just have to apologize and be able to own those things, right? And maybe that's missing a game, maybe that's having a short temper, right? Whatever that looks like. But yeah, it's there's a lot going on. So yeah.
And so if again, what you're doing, I see you pointing to people who have shown up for you and helped support you. So ways you pointed to mentors. You're talking about um, the role of your husband in Dave, right?
Mhm, Dave, yeah.
So Dave's role in this.
Mhm.
Um, so if what I'm thinking about is how can we be Daves for each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, what are things that we can do to um, just sort of seem like, so for people who are doing really good things in this world, it's so hard to do this by yourself, and having a community that you can connect with, um, and then to look for ways to Dave each other, right?
I can't wait to tell him this later that he's become like a verb.
Yeah. So, um, maybe I want to might be a fun thing to throw open to the group.
Mhm.
What can we do to, we know that we ourselves, like sometimes I feel overwhelmed, and I don't feel very Davy today. But
Mhm.
what can we do um to Dave up for each other? Um and I think that if I have on my mind that this is a goal of me, so I want to look for ways to
Mhm.
support other people, right?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I really, it's tough, right? Like, it's I think it's tough to do it within a relationship, and it's in like within your house. And I think it's tough to do it relationship outwise because you feel like you already have lots on your plate too. So how do you show up for other people? And so I think you have to show up in ways that um Mm, I don't know exactly how to say it. I'm going to give you like an example. Maybe that would help. Okay. So I'm going to give
Yeah.
you an example. So you and me working together, right? And so I know that there are things that you struggle with. in terms of like emails and organization and things like that. And so I know that if I'm going to show up to support Jack in the best way I can, it would be to take that over or to
Mhm.
preemptively do that stuff for you. So if I see emails coming in for a trip that we're going on, I know that our relationship is solid enough that you are not going to feel threatened by me sort of taking that on and taking that off your plate. So that's an example of like how I would show up for you in those situations. Can I organize this? Can I create a document for this that would be more easy for Jack to sort of organize things? Can I answer these
Right.
questions? Can I meet with this person and take that off of Jack's schedule because I have a little bit more time in my schedule to be able to do that. So what are the
And I just want to say that this, what Billy Joe is talking about, this isn't
oh,
hypothetical. We're leading a trip to the Galapagos together.
yeah,
Billy Joe set up the Slack channel, got everybody into it so they have a place to communicate there. Prepared all these documents, like things you should know before you go, and all these different sort of documents, and then figure out how to get those online, and then how to get the links to those to all the different people. And all of a sudden, level of communication goes from this to this.
right. And I think
Yeah.
it's knowing your people, right? And so knowing your people I think is really important. So like you and I, like maybe the first time to Tanzania, I was like, "Ooh, I'm not really sure what this looks like because I don't really know Jack that well and I don't know what his boundaries are." And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, we actually kind of fit together really well in terms of how we sort of work together to be able to sort of figure that out. And so then it became like, oh, these are the things that I think I can do that I do pretty well and I can support Jack in that. And so other things are, when I go into my parent council meetings with this school and I see that there's a struggle and I look and I go, I think that my co-chair maybe just needs an ear today, right? They need an ear. They need an extra little moment for someone just to listen to what's going on. And so, you know what? I can do that. I can be that person today to take that on. Or I can be the person that says, you know what, I'm going to take on this part of the really big fundraiser that's coming up because organizationally, I'm pretty good at that. So I can take that on and then take that off of somebody else's sort of schedule, right? So I wonder if it's about knowing our humans that are in our lives and that we are working with, we live with, we support, and kind of looking at like recognizing what does the human need and how can I show up for the human, right? And sort of thing. So, like my youngest daughter has quite a bit of anxiety. And so she's been having a little bit of a tough time lately. And so my husband and I were kind of racking our brains, being like, what's going on? What's good? And then finally, I just, listened a little more that one day. And I was like, I think this is what this is. And then we have a conflab and then we're like, yep, I think she needs some extra tools that we can't do. And so how I can support her is I can be like, I think it's time we make an appointment with the therapist and we go back to the therapist and we get some extra tools. And then she goes, oh, yeah, I think that would be really good. Right. And
Yeah.
so how do we show up for the people? And sometimes that's recognizing what it is. And so maybe coming back to Clara's question about, finding the balance, right? We still have to find the balance and that we can't be so hyper focused on what we're doing to not forget that not only are we being supported by the people around us, but we need to support them back, right? And so what does that look like? And sometimes it means it's a 5-minute phone call or a 5-minute text or an email that's shot off to say, like, hey, what's up? How are you? What's going on? Connecting. And so remembering to ask people about their day and sometimes just to listen. And so sometimes we can show up in really big ways in terms of taking stress off people's timetables. And sometimes we can show up in really small ways, which is just to lend an ear, right? And what does that look
But
like to sit on a couch and to snuggle? And sometimes with your kids, they just need a hug. And so you're like, "Yep, I can get up off the screen right now. I can provide a hug. I can do that." Right? And
yeah.
that's not going to change my timetable for my hustle to give hugs and cuddles, in what they need. So, um yeah, I hope I sort of conveyed that the way that I wanted it to be conveyed. So yeah.
Yeah. And so how interesting that again it comes down to paying attention,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's through paying attention that you figure out what are the things. And that
Hmm.
attention is it does take our energy,
Yeah.
but when we do that, just I had a sort of a similar experience on Monday. Amelia was she sort of came down with these migraine symptoms. It's never happened before,
Hmm.
but she was having visual disturbance and headache and dizziness and nausea. And I went and picked her up from school because it was the first time this has happened. We went to the ER and got it
Hmm.
checked out, and then we went and got boba, and we uh, you know, and I, being busy, Jack, I was thinking like I'm going to do all these sort of things. When I went to go pick her up at school, I brought my computer with me because there might be some time in the emergency room when I could sit there and kind of get some emails done, right? And but that all that stuff sort of stayed away, and um, and then there she was with her head on my shoulder, and we were just sort of talking quietly and being present and showing up. Paying attention is huge. Sometimes it is the paying attention that is the thing that we need, because when that happens, we know that we're loved.
Yeah,
And then sometimes that attention then informs sort of a next step. What can I do to support you?
yeah. It's every time we go camping, and we usually go 5 to 7 days, I always say to Dave, "Oh, I'm gonna bring my computer," because you just never know what it's gonna happen. That computer never comes out of my bag, and instead, we stay up till midnight playing hearts and beating the pants off of
Yeah,
rain and laughing hysterically into the night and singing crazy songs over the radio. And that's exactly what needed to happen. I didn't I
that's
didn't need
exactly what needed to
I
be
didn't
happening.
need to be on the computer. Those emails will wait until I get back, and everything will be fine, right? Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
But
So
right now, I only have this much time with the girls at this age, right? So I have to find the balance to that.
let's sort of extend this daving a little bit further, right? Um, and let's sort of think about sort of the community that we're making here within Wild Wonder, within our educators forum. Um, if there's anybody who's watching who has an idea to drop into this, I'd love to hear from you. My question is, what can we do to be um, to Dave up for each other? How can we support each other in ways that are meaningful and sustainable? Maybe if you've got a piece of paper, just take a moment, and I want to invite you to just kind of grab a little piece of paper, and with that idea in your head, the question is, what can we do as a community to show up for each other and to help be a network of support for each other? And give yourself just sort of a moment to write things down on a little piece of paper. I got some good ones. I'll bet you did too. I would love to hear what some things that came up on people's lists. And so if you want to share one, if you don't feel comfortable sort of talking in the group, feel free to drop it into the chat. Um, but even better, if you do feel comfortable doing so, just raise your paw, use the raise hand function. Or if not, then you can turn on your camera and start waving at us. Um, and we'll notice that. All right. Lindy, thank you for being with us.
Hi, good to see y'all.
Hi there.
Um, yeah, I love this question. I've been thinking about this with friends who are completely detached from any kind of work stuff that I do. And I've also been thinking about this with colleagues. I had actually a conversation about this last night with a friend. And one of the things that we both have separately kind of noticed, both in ourselves and within our communities, is that often I think we offer help. Like, for example, she has some new parents who are neighbors, and she was like, she's thinking about having kids. And so she was like, I've asked them several times. I'm like, tell me the hour. I'll be over there. You can get the groceries done. You can go take a nap. Like, you could just watch TV or fold the laundry or do whatever you need to do, and I'll hang out with your baby. And they're like, yes, yes, that sounds great, but never actually follow up on taking her up on that offer. And I think we all get so used to this idea that, like, if we're asking for help, it signal some kind of insufficiency or what have you. And so it's not just about making the offers for help, but also getting better at like accepting the help and saying, yeah, I will take you up on that. And I think that kind of forges this strong community. So, when people are saying, I'd love to volunteer for this, or, oh, would you need help in thought partnership for this upcoming workshop? Or, I'd be happy to share the spreadsheets of how I do my marketing or whatever it is. Even if you're not quite sure if you need that support, just taking them up on it and seeing what kind of community grows from that space. I think people get really hesitant to continue to offer help when they're not getting taken up on. So I think just those little acts of like not just offering, but also inviting and saying yes when things are offered, can be a good habit to be in. So that was one of the things that I was thinking of. I also wrote down, just showing up. Even if you're not necessarily like contributing. I think, people have put a lot of work into the workshops that they create or the different, like, show up and invite your friends and spread the word about things that are going on in the community to people who you think would be interested in. Marketing is really, really hard sometimes if you're not doing something in partnership with a specific entity. And so making sure that we're all trying to promote each other and um, yeah, I think that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
That's good. So I like how you're sort of pointing out that not only do we have a stigma about asking for help,
Mm.
there's a stigma about accepting help.
100%.
Or sometimes we might accept it, but then really not follow through on it.
Yeah.
But the more that we can actually let ourselves be vulnerable enough to accept that help, that was actually going to cement and grow the bonds between the people who are engaging in that
Mhm.
that activity. What is it? The Benjamin Franklin effect. You like the people better that you do nice things for. Right? Um, and that rather than feeling burdened, you feel more connected to those people. So you're actually strengthening those bonds by giving yourself permission to say yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there's that feeling too, like in accepting, is that you're like, oh, that was so nice of them to accept, but I'm not sure they really meant it. Right. And so you don't want to burden people. So I think that that becomes part of the accepting, is that you're like, were they saying that just to be nice, or were they really meaning it? And so, um, I just did it in was at a conference on the weekend, and I had workshop, and I said, feel free to email me, like take a card, email me anytime. And I said, I'm not saying that to be nice. I mean it seriously. If you actually want to ask questions, know that I actually mean for you to email me at any time. And that I'm really, and they started laughing, because again, it becomes one of those things that people just say, but does she really want me emailing her? And I'm like, yes. Yes, like I really would appreciate you emailing me with any questions, because I'd actually love to help in any way I could. And funny enough, somebody emailed, right? And so then I do my best to get right back at that and offer anything extra that I can, right? But being really explicit that you mean it, that you really want to be there, can sometimes help with the accepting. But yeah, it's tricky. I think people just don't want to burden people because everybody knows everybody's got lots on their plate. So it becomes tricky. So yeah, it's interesting when you brought up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
that's such a good example of that. Mm.
and then also in I think it's in Chinese culture where it is not polite to say yes to something that is offered you until maybe, you know, the third time or fourth time that something is offered.
Mm.
And that if you, you know, and so maybe there's a cultural thing, but even if there isn't a cultural thing, I think a lot of us are thinking like, does this person really mean it? I really don't want to be a burden.
Hmm.
Do you really mean it?
Hmm.
Um, and so, um, how to, um, how to make that happen?
I think part of it's communication. Ask them, do you really mean that? Like, are you really sure that this is what you want to take on? And then you get a vibe, right? And you're like, you know what? Yeah, I will take you up on that. So I think maybe that's part of it. Um, for your friend, parents of a new parent, the new moms there and the new dad, they're definitely going to struggle with that because they're going to have a guilt and an inferior context that they can't do it on their own like everybody else and that they need to ask for help and it's a whole thing. And, I'm always the first person when I see like a kid having like a full on temper tantrum in the store. I never judge the mom. I always look at the mom and I go, I see you. I've been there. I get like, I'm with you. Right. Because right in those moments, they are feeling like they are the worst parent ever. And
Yeah.
everybody in the store is judging them. And what people need to remember is you don't know that kid. You don't know what that kid's going through. You don't know what that family's going through and how dare you judge? And so I always say to moms, I got you. I see you, right? Give a smile and be like, you got this. Because sometimes it's really hard, right? In those situations. And so asking for help can even be trickier. But I think you're totally right. Like, we do need to learn to be like, I can't do this. I need help, right?
Or even like, I can do this and I totally got it, but I recognize that whatever my endeavor is going to be enhanced with your community
Yes.
and like with
Yes.
your
Yes.
input and,
Exactly.
just in
100%.
partner.
100%.
Yeah,
Yep. I agree with you.
totally.
That sort of judging part of us, that part of human nature comes up easily.
Mhm.
And we really have to, I think that it's useful to things like give yourself scenarios and to say, for instance, when I see the child having meltdown, I'm not going to judge mama, right? And it's easy to, you know, if I see somebody, um, I think that there's sort of a kind of a mean vibe that we have, like everybody at some point kind of loses their grip and freaks out about something.
Yep.
Nowadays, everybody's got a phone and somebody's going to record you freaking out. And then it's going to be on YouTube with a little bit of a voiceover.
Yeah.
Um, and, but how, you know, and there's this sort of Schadenfreude experience that we have of like, look at that person. Right. Um, that's a comfortable, self-satisfied place to sit, but it's not real
No. I have
because
full
we all are
fireman
that.
carries my children out of stores, like over the shoulder. Shh, you're being ridiculous. You're out of here. And I'm like, who's going to judge me? Bring it on because you have no idea what I'm dealing with. This kid is a maniac right now, and we are leaving, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really hard. I've given my kids timeouts in the middle of the aisle in the grocery store while they're freaking out. And I'm like, they're like, this is embarrassing. I go, I'm not embarrassed.
You don't mess with Canadian parenting.
The
Oh
only
no.
person that should be embarrassed right now is you and the way you're acting, right? But I think there's this part, and I don't know. It is hard because you're right. Everyone's got a cell phone, everybody's ready to judge you. And I think there's this part of me personally that like go for it. Like go for it. But you don't know what we deal with. You don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with my
Yeah,
kid.
that
You have
is.
no idea, right? What led to this situation or what it is. And you right now are judging thinking that I'm a really tough parent. You are judging and thinking that my kid is spoiled, but you don't know. You don't know, right? And so that situation can happen in a whole bunch of different things. That could be the fact that you didn't get the work done on time, and someone's going to say, oh, they're lazy, they just didn't do it, they procrastinated. Like, you don't know. You don't know unless you ask, and you don't know. And say, instead of judging that you didn't get it done, ask, should I have asked you earlier if there was something that I could have done to assist you in getting that done earlier and on time, right? So, and I think that comes back to that being perspective and looking for those cues and thinking, I think this person might need a little extra help. And I think it's on me to ask if they need it, and if they don't, or if I can support in any way, right? So those are all hard things, but I really do think it comes down to a lot of communication. A lot of communication. I remember somebody said one time, and I don't know who said it, but we listen to answer, we don't listen to listen. And I think that that's really important, and I don't do that often. I'm pretty sure I'm like undiagnosed ADHD, so I am an interrupter, like classically, and I need to sort of remember that. I'm an oversharer, right? Big time. And there's all these sort of different things, and so sort of remembering those things. And so I have to remind myself in a conversation to be like, Billie Jo, and with that, I will try to it's like to understand and to get them to understand that I understand what they're saying. Then I make story relations, like, oh, this happened to me one time too, and that's how I'm relating to that, right? Which is like classic ADHD stuff to do. But I'm not diagnosed, right? But I have had my children tested, and I'm like sitting there, and the doctor's like, I'm pretty sure it's you too,
Yeah.
right?
Check, check, check,
Right? So you're
and
like, yeah,
check.
I'm pretty sure it is me. But so now someone told me that, and I thought, oh, that's such an interesting thing to say. And so when I'm talking to people, I have to really be like, focus on what they're saying, Billie Jo. Try not to be already coming up with an answer. And if I do start to come up with an answer, I'm like shut it back and focus on what it is that they're saying, right? Because I think that's really important, is that with that communication, we have to be better listeners, so that that I think is where things get crazy, is that some of the, you weren't listening, and you're like, well, I was, but you weren't, because you were listening to answer in some kind of defensive retaliation, or whatever it is, right? And so I think it's really important that we try to like shut the other things out and focus on what the person is saying, taking a second, and then being able to digest and answer. Are we always perfect on that? Right? Otherwise, imagine what the world would be like if we were all really great listeners and communicators. But I do think that's, can be really important in different situations when looking to support others, is listening. Mm.
Yeah, that listen to listen versus listen to answer got a purple box around it in my notes.
I don't know who said it. It was not Billie Jo, but somebody said it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah.
So listening to this, and again, I want to invite anybody who wants to sort of drop an idea into this, just use the raise hand button, and you're in the conversation. We're coming up with sort of a list of bullet points on how to Dave up. So this first idea is really paying attention. And when you're listening, as Billie Jo's saying, listening to listen versus listening to answer. So before you kind of jump into problem solving, just to be there, because sometimes that's actually what people need. They actually, the thing is that nobody's listening, and to be listened to is to be to get receive attention, and it's the connection that we need. Sometimes that alone is the thing. You also talked about asking how sometimes you can sort of see, like, maybe here's my answer to this, I'm going to do this, but what if you ask? and you really are meaning. And if the person doesn't know, to say, would this help? Would this help? And um and to mean it, to be willing to do that work for that other person. Something that is nice in the Dave situation is that um you are, because you're in a sort of the rules of a family unit often are that energy invested in here is going to help us both.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of us have boundaries drawn around ourselves and different parts of our community. And if somebody's on the other side of this wall, then they're not somebody that I'm willing to invest calories in helping, or their competition. Um, but um, or it's a zero-sum game where if I spend this energy here, that's energy that I will never get back. And that therefore, why would I invest those calories in helping you when I want to be looking out for me? But the more that we can have boundaries that kind of also include each other,
Mhm.
right? Then we're in a place where we can it's hard to help somebody who's on the other side of the other wall,
Mhm.
right? And the more that we can sort of see that sort of shared humanity and connection, or when you see that mom who's having a really really rough day in the market, and instead of judging, you're able to empathetically put yourself in that same person's shoes. That I think that's part of being able to help each other, is to have your wall also include them, or to take down your wall.
Mhm.
Interesting. Um, Interesting. As I'm thinking about sort of the judging part of it, I see myself um, being guilty of that all the time. It's really easy, especially with people your who are not part of your main identity group, to get really judgy.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think that helps the world.
Mhm.
I want to just we've got to just we've gone over our time, but while you're here, just want to bounce a couple of other little questions past you, Billie Jo, to
Sure.
talk about your thoughts. Lindy, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you,
your
Lindy.
thoughts
It's
and
great seeing you.
ideas
We haven't seen you for
on
a
this.
while, so it's lovely to have you back.
It's so good to see y'all too.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Um, so the I had there's a couple of key questions, and then I think we can kind of I can let you go.
Okay.
Um, So one is just a straight up logistical question. You
Sure.
came up with a system whereby you could go out in nature into the middle of winter in Canada on a cold day and have a live video feed to classrooms. So you weren't going out and pre-recording something and then sharing this. You were real time going, let's go for a walk in the woods. And you
Mhm.
would step out your door and you would go for a walk in the woods
Mhm.
and find a phenomenon and do nature journaling about it with kids online all over Canada.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is that's a pretty impressive technological achievement.
Yeah, now I will say, like, it was a combination. Like, it wasn't just me. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I came up with the idea. It was a collective with the group of folks that I was working with at the field centers, and part of that was the board giving us access to a MiFi, I think it was called, or a MiFi, I don't know. It says MiFi, and what it was a contraption of some sort that connected to I think it connected to the phone signals or whatever. And so it created a Wi-Fi hotspot for us. And so we would carry that in our pockets. And then we would have the phone connect to that Wi-Fi sort of hub. And so that Wi-Fi was just whatever the cell service was within the community that you were in, how many bars you got, et cetera, et cetera. And so that really, that piece of technology did really make a big difference, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do that, because the data that it would have used up on our phones personally would have been catastrophic. And so that was a big piece of technology that the board provided for us. From there, everybody sort of we collaborated in terms of like, what are you guys using, what are you using, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I found that worked for me best was to have one headphone in and one headphone not in. And so the reason why I wanted to do that is because I wanted to not be screaming on the trails, because there was other people that were out there enjoying the wilderness. So by having one in my ear and one not in my ear, I was able to hear this sound, the loudness of my own voice, while still being able to communicate with the students, because my voice is very big and it travels very far. So I wanted to be respectful to the people that were in the space. I then they bought us selfie sticks, so we used a selfie stick to be able to do that. And then I personally had purchased the little clips, lenses that go onto the camera that you can use, like a fisheye, a macro, whatever, whatever. And so I started using the macro lens to be able to get really close for students. And then in the winter, we were really worried about battery packs, because some days, like I just came across a picture the other day where on my Instagram feed that said it was minus 28 degrees outside and with the wind chill. And I was out there doing like a thing at Island Lake, right? And all of us were doing it. It
And that's
wasn't just
not
me.
minus 28 Fahrenheit.
It's degrees Celsius, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it goes the same in the negative. I don't know. It was almost minus 30. It was really cold. But
Yep.
yeah. So we all came up with things. So I took a phone case and then I cut foam and I insulated the back of it. And then inside of on the outside of that, on really cold days, I was able to add like a hot pad that you put like in your mittens to sort of do that. And then what we were doing is finding that our batteries were dying. So then we had external battery packs that we would put in our coat pocket and then have the cord come out and go into the phone, that would keep the phone charged, especially if I was doing multiple classes. So maybe I was out there for 3 or 4 hours as opposed to just one class. I would have to have my battery charged continuously. And so everybody was doing this. For me, it was the nature journaling piece that I think I probably went further down the rabbit hole with everybody. And so by having my own schools, I was able to see them as many times as I wanted. So I was connecting with teachers and creating relationships with them. And I would say, like, what are you teaching? And then they would be like, oh, I'm teaching this. And I'd be like, I can run a program with you on that, no problem, right? This is how I can integrate it, this is how I can do that. No, and having like a really good knowledge of the Ontario curriculum was really beneficial to that. So then what I would do is I would start off with a nature journaling introductory. So I would meet them for the first time. Everybody, I would ask the students to come with their own paper, pencil, and something from nature. And that could be something from in the fridge, that could be a house plant, that could be a pet, whatever it is that they wanted to bring. And so we would go through the scaffolding and we would nature journal, and they would nature journal the thing that they had. So everybody had something tangible in their hands, as opposed to just watching me look at the thing that I was looking at. I wanted them each to have their own thing. And so then once they had that sort of scaffolding, then we were able to then go outside, and then I was able to integrate different things, right? So we did poetry, and so then we would sit with like a flower, and they would nature journal the flower, and then we would use some of the I notices and it reminds me of and build haikus as like a class, which was really cool. And then because I didn't have paper and pencil there, the teacher was the scribe, and so then collectively as a group of students we would create these really cool haikus for whatever it is that we were looking at. Or I was able to do like adaptations and then be like, I found a snail, and then put the macro lens on, and then get down on the ground, and then they would see like this snail like chomping away at things, or whatever it is that I was able to find. And I mean, it's nature, like sometimes things show up and sometimes things don't show up, but I think that was kind of part of the funness, if that's a right word to use, was that we never really knew what.
Funitivity, I think, is the technical
Yeah,
term.
yeah. So like what we were gonna find. And so one time we found a deer and it scared the bejesus out of me, and it jumped and the kids were like, wow, like this deer, it was really cool. Or in the wintertime, I would find like a rabbit kill, and I would say to the kids, like, I found a rabbit kill. Like, I don't know if I want to show this on the screen. And they were like, show it, show it. And so then we were able to talk about like, what does that look like? Who do you think killed the rabbit? What are the pieces that are left? Da 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 da, and have these like full science things. And then, having their nature journals there, they were able to ask more questions. And the really cool thing is that the more I nature journaled with the students, the more if I was with a class more than once or more than twice, more than 3 times, is that the language that they were using. So even if they didn't have a paper and pencil out and they were just doing it, they would say, I noticed this, I wonder this, it reminds me of this. And so they were
Nice.
able to really start using the language. And those are some of the things that I thought were really resonating, is that that language became a part of our conversations in terms of what it is that we were looking at, no matter sort of how that sort of transpired. And yeah, like winters can be really mild here, and winters can be crazy here, right? And so for the most part, we really only get like about a month and a half maybe that's crazy and really cold, except for last winter we had snow levels of epic proportions that we haven't seen in probably 20 years, right? So you just never quite know. But yeah, it was really fun. And so for me, like, although all the bad things with COVID that were going on, I actually didn't hate COVID, because I was able to like really, not COVID, but
The time, yes.
the
Yeah.
time period. I didn't I didn't mind being at home with my family. Like that was good and healthy for me. Enjoyed it. I liked the autonomy over my work schedule. I liked the connections that I was making with the students and the staff. I liked that I was able to be in control and create the programs that I thought would suit that class and that student, built on the relationships that I was making. And so I really enjoyed that part of it. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, COVID was so great. Like, no, there was
No, no, no. I understand. You're
horrible
not
things.
saying yay COVID, but you're
No, it
saying
was just
that
the
out
time.
of that change of our social dynamics, there were some
Yeah,
of those changes were
yeah,
positive things.
yeah.
Not
And so
that people getting sick was positive.
yes,
Totally.
yeah, yeah. Like, and I didn't struggle with it. I really embraced that time with my family, and then just having this amazing space where I was creating. And so I worked, again, the hustle, right? Because you were at home and you still had to put in your hours to work, because but you were making a salary. So there wasn't really much proof except to say, well, I'm doing all these classes. And so to me, it meant I had to work really hard. So again, that showing up and working really hard. So I booked myself like insane. So there wasn't a day in a Monday to Friday that went by that I didn't book a minimum of 4 classes
Yeah.
that I was running. And because to me, that showed that I was showing up to work, that I was doing my job, that I was worth the money that I was being paid, right? So again, that was that sort of hustle to do that. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that time frame over that, and doing something different like that. Although it was challenging, right? It was challenging but good. Hmm.
That's yeah, that is useful. It's interesting that when sort of such a force of change comes into our world,
Yeah.
um, as things sort of rearrange themselves, how do we kind of end up, like, we wouldn't be here having this conversation
Yeah.
had the COVID not come through. That's how these
Yeah.
sort of online discussions started.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think there's part of that too, in that there was so much chaos and there was so much awfulness that was happening in the world,
yeah.
that it was the way that I could cope with it was to make my family a priority, but also to
Mm.
have the autonomy over that learning, that I could pull something positive out of the chaos and give myself like these breaks and joyful moments inside of a hurricane of insanity, which was the world. Does that sort of make,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
sort of, yeah. Mhm.
Wow. I've got one more question for you, and then we're going to let you go.
Okay.
You have made incredible networks and inroads into the school system.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of for people who want to get connected? And of course, the school system will be different in the United
Everywhere.
States and different in
Sure.
Canada. But from your experience
Mhm.
developing these things in Canada, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for people who are interested in connecting with school systems, either public or private?
It's a great question. It's a really, really great question. I I don't know if I have it sorted out completely. I definitely still feel like there's some hustle game in there that I still need to capture. Because really part of my goal is to get more kids nature journaling, right? So not necessarily Billy Joe more business, but I really want to have more kids
Yeah,
nature journaling. And
that's
so
that purpose part of the triad.
yeah, right? Like obviously the money is part of it as well, but I love working with kids and getting them nature journaling. As I come home and I feel like my bucket has been filled. But anyways, I digress. Um so one thing that I did coming out of um losing my job was, there was a teacher at my kid's school, and she's a younger teacher, and she was Rain's grade uh 4 teacher during COVID. And I remember just thinking, ah man, this teacher's so awesome and she's doing really great things, and I think I want to reach out to her. And we had a good relationship again, because I'm on parent council, right? So I have like a really good relationship with my kids' school. And so I saw her in summer and I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking I'd like to do. And so I proposed an 8-week session with her. So said, can I come in? She was teaching grade 6 at the time. I said, can I come in to your school free of charge, completely free of charge? And I said, can I come in and run an 8-week nature journaling session with your grade 6 students? And I said, for me, I am trying to test out some stuff. And I said, for you, I said, this is a great way for you to try some stuff out. P.S. I'd given her your book already as a teacher gift. So
Ooh,
I was
timing.
like, I had already given it to her. She already had it. And I was like, I can help you, like, sort of go through that book. And I said, I know you do really awesome stuff. And one of those things is trying to get the kids outside more. So I'd love to work with you. And then I'd love you to give me feedback on it. And so she was like,
Ah,
1,000%, please come and do that. And I was like, great. And so then that sort of turned into that, and I did it and it was amazing. And then I kind of got on and started working within my kids' school. But I did work in the Peel District School Board for 12 years. So I had some connections, and out of COVID, I had created some really good relationships with those teachers. And so funny enough, I'm not booking a lot with Peel, which is kind of funny, but I have friends in the
Peel is your local school district?
it's the one I used to work with. So my
Oh,
kids,
yeah.
so yeah, so Ontario is split up into like a whole bunch of different school boards. So the Peel District School Board and the Toronto District School Board are the two biggest in Ontario. And the Peel District School Board starts maybe 20 minutes south of me here in Orangeville, and goes all the way down to Lake Ontario. My kids are part of the Upper Grand District School Board. And so then there's the Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board, which is the Catholic school board, which runs sort of Orangeville and all the way down through Peel, right? So it's a big one as well. And so I was like, I need to get into schools. And so part of that was to go to their websites and see what it looks like in terms of vendors. And so do you have to become a vendor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with the Peel District School Board, I had a teacher friend and I said, I just started asking questions like, how do you become a vendor with the Peel District School Board? Blah, blah, blah. Called the board, asked them questions.
Mhm.
And they were like, nope, you don't have to become a vendor with this board. You just have to make sure that you get permission from a principal. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, obviously, you need to have your insurance and you need to have your vulnerable sector checks. And so that's, I don't know if you guys call it the same thing, but it's a check to show that I don't have a criminal record, and that I don't have a criminal record with vulnerable populations. So if I'm in with kids, basically. So if you work with kids in Ontario or most of Canada, you have to have a vulnerable sector check. So Dave has to have one of those because he referees hockey. So if you are in a position of leadership over children, they want to make sure that you are not a bad person.
This is wise.
Yes, so I have to have that, and you have to have one that is within 6 months. So you have to think about that because it takes about 8 weeks to get that back because it has to go to the RCMP, which is our federal level police. So that takes 8 weeks to get that back, right? So you submit it, and then 8 weeks later you get it. So I will have to resubmit that shortly to make sure that I'm always within 6 months of that piece of paper or whatever. And so that's just their due diligence, making sure that they're not having
Yeah.
bad people come in. And so if you have those things kind of sorted out and you have that, then some school boards they can just say, yep, we're just going to have you come in, you can provide all this stuff. Great, fantastic. I called Upper Grand District School Board this year, which is my kid's school board, and there wasn't really like an avenue for it. It was very peculiar. And then a teacher that I know from the high school just reached out and she was like, I got approval from the principal. You need to have your vulnerable sector check. You need to have your insurance and you need to have like, they call it like a CV, which is basically like a summary of my expertise in the area to make sure I'm just not like Joe's blow off the street, right? That I'm coming with some education background. Done, right? With the Dufferin Peel Catholic Board, you have to become a vendor. And so on their website, there is like a button that says become a vendor, and you have to do an application. And with them, you have to have a principal or admin who is saying, yes, this person is saying what they're saying or whatever it is, how they're doing it. So again, that opportunity to work on that administrative day with Take Me Outside, where I got to meet almost all the administrative staff, admin, so meeting principals and vice principals within that entire school board was really beneficial because then I had a teacher friend who had a principal who said, yes, I will be that person on that to get, and I got accepted within 48 hours. Yeah.
Nice.
So again, it's a hustle, right? Because not, although we're all in Ontario, not every board has the same rules. And so there are boards that I haven't even looked into yet in terms of being opened up to, but most of the boards have, a couple hundred schools, right? So I'm not never going to get filled in one school year with all the schools anyways. So there's lots of room for growth there. But again, it's the hustle, and then you having to ask the questions to the board, and that's going on their website. That's getting to know other teachers in the community, and getting to know them and asking the questions. And honestly, I've met a bunch through community, like through the library. Teachers will come out with their own children in the summer to do program, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm a teacher at so and so," and da 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 da. So creating connections through community, I think, is also a really great way to sort of expand out your business. COEO, which is the Council of Outdoor Educators of Ontario, they run a fall conference. Lots of teachers go to that. So I generally try to run like a nature journaling workshop or be around for people to sort of ask questions. That's a great networking opportunity. I was able with Project Wet. I work with lots of teachers with Project Wet. So then they kind of find out about nature journaling. So again, it's really community driven and chatting and making connections and networking and bringing it back to the hustle, right?
Yeah.
To sort of see how that kind of runs out. But yeah.
And you're also then making things, you are finding out in advance, if I'm going to be doing something in this school district, these are the hoops that they're going to need me to jump through. Let's
Yeah.
be proactive and just make it easy for the teacher to say, yes, I would love to have you, and then you say, good, because here's all the paperwork. When should we do this?
Right. So I knew before even going and getting my insurance that school boards needed at least $5 million liability. So I knew before applying for that $2 million liability wasn't going to get me into a school board. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to do your own research to find out like what are the schools in your area looking for, and then making sure that you have all that stuff ready to go. And so now with my insurance company, I'm able to write an email that says, can you give me a certificate of insurance? Can you put so and so's name on the top of it? This is who I'll be working for. And then sometimes I leave it open ended if it's like a school board, because I'll be there multiple days. So I don't want
Right.
to be specific. They're able to provide that with me. And then there you go. So I try to be as proactive as possible and have that stuff lined up. I've created packages where people can say, I'm interested. And then I go, great, here's the package. And I send that off in a PDF. And then they come back and they say, okay, I'd like to book. And then, I say, great, here's the tentative schedule. Here's the confirmation of our discussion on price. And by the way, here's all that extra information again, plus the cancellation policy. Boom, go from there. Um, Oh, so James, I'm hoping you're okay if I ask your question out loud. He's asking if I work with homeschool groups. I haven't had anybody from homeschool reach out yet, but I would love to work with homeschool groups. So yeah, I'm really open to working with anybody. I just had a girl guide group reach out too. So that's maybe some weekend work there. So anytime I get to work with kids and or parents or teachers and trying to spread the joy and love of nature journaling, I'm pretty much open to it. I really don't want to say no. I'm sorry, I don't work with your group. So I'm really open to working with anybody. Yeah. So. Mhm.
Excellent. That's really helpful to sort of see how you're sort of helping, you're making it easy for the people that want to work with you.
I'm trying, right? And so there's new things that I keep learning that I'm like, oh, and then I have to add that to my to-do list to sort of go
Right.
through, right? But I try to have so I have like a Google Drive, and then I keep all my documents in there, and if I can reuse them, and then I try to create just make a copy and then create it for the next school and then put all the information so that I can remember what I told them. And then I have lots of calendars to help me organize, because I seem really well organized, but I actually forget a lot of things a lot of the
You're getting
time.
better.
So I have multiple calendars to actually keep things quasi organized. So yeah, and my fear is always that I will forget that I'm supposed to go somewhere or I'm supposed to do something. So tomorrow I'm going into my very first school. Tomorrow is my very first school that I'll be going into to start running classes. So I'm really excited, and never in my wildest dreams that I think that I would be booked as solidly as I am going into the fall. But right now I have no openings until the middle of November. So that's
That's
pretty
a good
great.
problem to have.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it'll slow for the winter, which is great, because then any of the hours that I haven't been using up for Project Wet, I'll be able to jump on board with that. And then Connected North is all online, right? So there should be some balance and flow to everything. But yeah, so far so good. So we'll see how it all goes out.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Well, that gives us some strategies
yeah.
to think about. Like, you look at somebody who's got a business and it just sort of seems like this big thing, but it
Mhm.
started from little steps,
Little
and
steps.
and then this leads to this, and then there's serendipity, and then you put
Yeah.
a name on the group and you come up with a logo and everybody thinks you're a thing.
Yeah.
And but really, we all got there. And so let's also, as we're seeing other people in this community, we are not competing with each other,
No, 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 no. We all
right?
bring our own little slice
Right.
of differences to the world. And I think I've
Yeah.
said this to you before, like, I'm not you and you're not me. And so, although we're both teaching nature journaling, and yes, I might be using the same scaffolding that you're using, I'm going to come at it with a very different approach because I
Excellent.
am me, right? And so, some people are going to really like that, and some people are really like, oh, right? So, and that's okay. That's okay. That's why there's lots of us out here who are doing really great things. Yeah.
And so the more that we can, as a community, support each other and help each other,
Yeah.
um, that you never know well where that will go, because that's part of just showing up and being kind in this world.
Yeah, and collaborate with each other. Imagine if we all collaborated more together, and instead of competing, we were like, "Hey, do you want to do this together?" Like that would be pretty awesome too, right? So, yeah. So there's always lots of ways to collaborate, and I'm a proponent for win-win situations if at all possible. So, thank you, Jack, for having me come. Hopefully, I didn't bore people to death today with this. But
There's
thank
some
you
really useful
for,
ideas, and it
yeah.
took this this sort of a really interesting turn mid-show towards the concept of daving up, right? And I think that's useful whether or not we're in education, because those same ideas just sort of apply to wherever we are and whatever we're doing.
Yeah,
How can we
absolutely.
dave up for each other?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, so we've been in conversation with Billie Jo Reid, and we have been looking at how to what is the process through which she developed Pine and Ponder Outdoors. And we hope that some of these ideas are useful to you as you are putting together your own sort of, whether it's a personal business or thinking about, just how am I going to be working with my grandkids? Or
Mm,
maybe bringing something to, your local school or library. There's many, many different ways to do this. And Billie Jo, thanks so much for
thanks.
talking with us today. I also want to send a shout out to our other co-host. I see
Yeah, I see her
is
here too.
is it okay to bring you on screen? Yeah, I'm going to bring on Avea, the mad botanist more. Hey, nice bee.
Hi, Avea.
Um, and yeah, yeah, so Billie Jo, thank you so much
Well,
for
thank you very
sharing this
much
today.
to the two of you. You, I like I said in my slideshow, you two have become very big mentors to me, and looking at things in a very different way, and giving me lots of ideas that I, can steal from you, which I think are amazing. And the two of you are really mean so much to me, both of you, and in this community. So thank you both so much for inviting me in and allowing me to co-host with you, and get to share these Wednesdays with you. I really, really appreciate you both very, very much. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who is here today. So, yeah.
Folks, until we meet again, my thought for today is wherever we are in the world, let's figure out ways of daving up for others in our community and extending the boundaries of what is that community of love that we're going to nurture and take care of. What if, as a personal challenge, we could extend that a little bit larger, a little bit further than it already is? And let's see if we can show up for each other in this life. Folks, thank you so much, and we will see you all again soon.
Thank you, everybody.